All right, let me move this down. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm back. Very excited to be here with Girls Rock Detroit, Girls Rock Rochester partnership to bring you all another workshop in our series of workshops, just talking about the business behind music and why it is important to understand the business behind music. Last workshop, we talked a little bit about some of the actual business principles behind the industry, starting a business, creating a strong, solid foundation to build on top of. And we talked a little bit about some of the intellectual property and legal aspects of being able to protect your art and your greatest asset, which is your ability to create. So today, kind of piggybacking off of some of the creative aspects of that, we're going to talk a little bit about social media, branding, and marketing, how to market your brand to a broader audience. Now, I will say this, marketing and branding is one of those things that is such a huge industry. There's so many different avenues and definitions and ways and all types of contexts that you can take and approach rather that you can take to developing a market strategy and a brand for yourself. I oftentimes do think that branding and marketing is also something that is presented to people in the music industry as, or not just the music industry, truthfully, marketing and branding is presented to the world as something that only an established company or entity can develop or partake in. But I like to challenge that because as a musician, what you're doing through playing guitar, through playing keys, or through developing your own sound, that is your brand. Developing a visual to the types of photo shoots that you like to take or the type of clothes that you wear, all of those things put together are your brand. And when you post things on social media, when you're making flyers, when you're doing shows, all of those are avenues to market your brand. So if you are a musician, this 100,000% applies to you. If you are a business owner, this applies to you no matter what you are or what end of different types of industries that you exist in. Marketing and branding is something that can be relevant to everyone. So I'm going to go off camera. We're going to talk a little bit about, actually, no, we'll stay on today, I think. So we'll talk about getting into social media marketing and branding. So I want to start a little bit with two questions. These two questions right here, which are super, super important as a foundation to build onto marketing and branding. Number one is going to be, what does marketing mean to you? And then what does branding mean to you? I will answer those questions first, and you can kind of just, if you're watching this recording later, or if you're here with us now, you can just kind of jot down some notes that might be good responses for you. But marketing, for me, marketing means taking my brand, taking what it is that I want to put out into the world and pushing that thing through different mediums, through TV, through advertisements, social media, radio interviews, creating music, whatever. I'm taking all of my brand, my sound, my look, my image, and I'm pushing it out through different avenues to the world around me, to different audiences. And we'll talk a little bit about audiences and how to cater your marketing strategy and your brand to different audiences later. The second part of that is, what about branding? For me, branding is something that I truthfully just stumbled into. I didn't realize that I understood or could create a brand for myself until I kind of just slid into it. And we'll talk a little bit about what my brand is and how I've developed some of that over the years. But branding to me is something that is the look, the sound, the thing that you want your audience or people on the outside looking in to see or hear when they look or listen to you as a musician, as an artist, a vocalist, a company, whatever. Your brand is going to be what you portray to the outside world, to your audience. And that's going to be how you want them to look at or perceive what it is that you do and how you do it. When it comes to marketing, the differences between marketing and branding, marketing is going, and we'll look at the definitions in a little bit, but marketing is going to be the tools. Marketing are the social media avenues. Again, all of the radio play, TV things, advertisements, billboards, radio interviews, all of those things are avenues and tools that you can use to market your brand to your audience. Your brand is going to be the thing, again, the thing that makes you unique. The brand is going to be the thing that makes you stick out, and it's going to be the thing that you want people to notice or to remember when they look at you or when they hear your name. And we're going to talk about two people in particular, two iconic women that I think do an excellent job at branding and marketing their brand in the music industry. But starting with mine right here. So I truthfully stumbled into my brand. As you can see, green is literally everywhere. Green has always been one of my favorite colors. And truthfully, it's been neon green. The specific shade of neon green has been one of my favorite colors for a long time. And so when it came time to buy my third or fourth guitar, I was just naturally drawn to the bright colors that I saw on the website. ESP Guitars is one of the first guitars that I got that was green. And I just fell in love with it strictly because of the color. And from there, I kind of just took it and ran with it and said, I wonder what else I can make green. So I started experimenting with dyeing my locks, hence the now green. And I sometimes add yellow in there, which yellow has become part of my branding colors as well. But green has been the foundation for my brand in terms of the look. The other side of my brand, though, is digging into how I want the audience, my different audiences, to perceive what it is that I do and who I am. So, for example, a lot of people on social media met me through being a musician, but over the years, I started to get more into business. I went to law school. I started to learn more and wanted to be in the educational space within the music industry. And so I had to shift the way that I marketed my brand, and I had to pivot my brand itself to include I'm a musician, I am also a lawyer, I am also an educator, I am also a conservationist. So all of these things became part of my brand. And truthfully, these are all things that I just naturally fell into. So if you're taking notes, I definitely think from this slide, one of the first things to write down is the importance of branding. And as you're coming up with your brand, making sure that it's something that is not forced. I will also say that there's nothing more cringeworthy than seeing a brand that is being forced through the lens of through social media or through music or through radio interviews or billboards, an image that is kind of forced and pushed down our throats as consumers. To me, that's a turnoff. And to me, it makes me not want to engage or buy or help sustain that artist or that brand for the long run. I might double tap it on Instagram because that particular photo looks cool, but that's a situational thing. So when we're talking about branding and marketing, one thing to really extract from this is that you really want something that is going to give you long-term longevity and sustainability for whatever industry you're in, for whatever level you're on. You want something that's going to give you sustainability and longevity. And in my experience, one of the best ways to accomplish that is to take the things that you are naturally passionate about and that you naturally like and incorporate those things, get creative with incorporating those things into your brand. For me, that was the green. So we don't have to go through this, but I'll make sure I provide all this information, a little bit about my background, and a little bit about my company, the TxLips Band, which is a global entity that triples as a self-management firm, a consulting group, and an international touring collective called Guitar Gabby and the TxLips Band. And so we'll dig into some of the specific members and how that ties to the overall brand in a little bit. Now, I do want to point out something here because mission statements, we'll talk about this in a couple of slides as well, but a mission statement is definitely something that you want to have in your mind as you're developing and thinking about what your brand is and how you want to create a marketing strategy around said brand. The reason why a mission statement is important, not just for a company, not just for a nonprofit, but even for you as an artist, as a musician, as a vocalist. The reason why a mission statement is going to be really important is because when you're marketing your brand to different audiences, through different avenues, you have to learn to appeal to different demographics. You have to learn to appeal to different types of people. And a mission statement is a really quick 2 to 3 sentence way to show your audience, this is what I'm after. This is my long-term goal. Here's my brand. Here's how I'm trying to market my brand to you, my consumer, to you, my different types of audiences. And my mission statement is this, and I would love for you to join me on this journey to help push this mission for us to collectively reach that goal. So developing a mission statement might feel like something that is only for nonprofits or only for companies to do, but I really like to push back on that and encourage you as a musician or an artist to sit down and develop a mission statement. What are your goals? What is it that you're seeking to do as a musician? What is it that you're trying to do as an artist? Where are you going? And just providing a mission statement will help give you some direction, but it'll also give your audience and your consumer an idea of the direction that you're going in. And the other thing that I will say when it comes to marketing strategies behind your brand and your mission statement being part of this is when you can give your audience or your consumer a clear direction of how you want them to engage with you, how you want them to support you, you give them that clear pathway. So it shows them, okay, this is where that artist is going, and these are the different ways that I can support them. You know, half of these ways to support them might not be up my alley, but I've identified one or two things that I clearly see will support, you know, Guitar Gabby the TxLips Band on their mission to challenge the boundaries set in various industries. The last thing I'm going to say about mission statements to write down is your mission statement will also help give people, you give your audience or your consumers a sense of awareness and a sense of relevancy. It's going to give them the ability to say, you know what, I can identify with her mission statement. I can identify with the goals that she's going after, and I can identify with the way that she's doing it. So I would like to support by way of whatever. So mission statement, if you're taking notes, mission statement is definitely something important to think about as you are developing your brand and as you're developing a marketing strategy behind that brand. So one of the first activities I want to start with is finding your brand. Now, this is something that can be really difficult. There are two activities, actually, I'm going to kind of run through explaining both of these, and I highly encourage you to do this in your spare time as often as you can. These activities, when it comes to developing your brand, a brand and marketing strategy, well, let me just stick with brand. Your brand is going to be something that's going to be constantly evolving. It's going to constantly be changing because you are constantly growing and evolving and changing. And so making sure that your brand has a strong foundation, but also has room to be creative and pivot and change as you continue to grow and elevate is extremely important. So one of the activities that I love to share with people is to, one, find a photo, or actually, let me start with a different activity that's not on here. I should have put it on here, and I'll make sure that it's included in the notes that get sent out post-workshop. But one of the first activities I like to do is type in one of my favorite artists online. And actually, let's do it right now. We're going to do it in real time. Prince is someone that I really admire for so many reasons. So I type in the artist that I like, and then I go to images on Google. And the first thing that I'm looking for is the similarities. I'm just doing a really quick glance. I'm looking for things that stick out to me. One of the main things that always has stuck out for audiences, for people globally about Prince, is the color purple. And the color purple is something that Prince incorporated into his guitar, into his outfits, into his stage lighting, into album covers, into shoes, everything that you can think of. Prince did an excellent job at branding the color, or using the color purple to market his brand to different broader audiences and demographics out there. So the activity that you're going to do is go to Google, type in one of your favorite artists, scroll over to the images, and as you're just skimming through it, literally just skimming through it, what you're looking for is, what does your eye pick up first? What is it that your eye notices? That is going to be part of what makes the foundation of your brand. For Prince, one of the foundational principles of his brand is the color purple. And the way that he markets his brand is by using the color purple in his guitar, in his outfits, or in his stage lighting. So that's kind of a quick exercise to give you an idea of, one, how to quickly identify someone else's brand as you're thinking about what your brand is going to be. And it's also going to give you a glimpse into how to market your brand. And we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between marketing and branding in a second. One of the second exercises that I like to do is finding a photo online of someone that has a brand that you admire or want to emulate. And then from there, just really studying that person's brand, studying their photos, looking at their photo shoots. And this is going to take a little bit more time than the first exercise that we just looked at. But as you're figuring out what it is that you like about that person's brand, we're looking at their outfits, the staging of their photo shoots, for example, looking at all of the small details, the little things that really add to the big picture. I will also say that when it comes to marketing your brand through avenues like photo shoots, for example, this is where you can get super creative, but taking a step back to figure out, okay, what exactly are my foundational principles with my brand and how it is that I want my brand to be marketed to different audiences is really going to help you identify different avenues that you can be creative without going too far to the left, too far to the right, but making sure that you're including those small, intricate details in your photo shoot, for example, or in your stage lighting or in your music video that are, one, going to attract the eye of your consumer, but two, is still going to keep, still maintain your consumers' interest in getting them involved and engaged in the way that you're marketing your brand. And then one of the third things you're going to look at with this exercise is, what are some of the specific things about that person's brand that you believe cross over into your brand? So as you're looking at one of your favorite artists, and or singers or companies, entities, whatever, what you're looking for is what is it that that company does really good? What are some of the consistencies that I see through their different photo shoots, through their sound, through their music videos, through the way that their website is laid out. You're looking for the consistencies because one thing that is extremely important with marketing your brand and developing your brand is consistency and repetition. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So now we're going to scooch into the differences between branding and marketing. So what exactly is marketing? Marketing refers to any action a company or artist entity takes to attract an audience to the company's product or services through high quality messaging. Marketing aims to deliver standalone value for prospects and consumers through content with the long-term goal of demonstrating product value, strengthening brand loyalty, and ultimately increasing sales. What does that mean and how is that relevant to you as a musician, for example? So let's start with the first part. Marketing refers to any actions a company or musician in this context takes to attract an audience to your product or services through high quality messaging. So for me, what that could look like is the different avenues or photo shoots that I might take to attract the audience, attract my consumers to be engaged in the product or service that I'm selling. So if I'm a musician and I just released or I'm about to release an album, the way that I'm going to go about marketing that album through the lens of my brand is going to be what attracts the audience to purchase that album when it comes out. Not only is it going to get them to purchase that album when it comes out, it's also going to demonstrate value so that my consumers can see this is something that took a lot of time. I can hear and feel and tell that Gabby spent a lot of time developing this photo shoot or developing this album. So the goal is going to be one, showing my consumer or my audience, this is the product that I want for you to buy. And not only that, but I want you to see the value in this product that I'm looking to sell or that I'm asking for you to buy. And I have a long-term goal of demonstrating the value and how important this is to developing brand loyalty, developing followers. So when you are looking to market your brand to a broader audience, again, going back to being a musician and looking at it from that perspective, one of the things that I like to examine, that I like to examine is, I just lost my train of thought. One of the things that I like to look at when you're looking to market your brand are different ways that you can engage your audience, not just for the one-time purpose of buying that album or buying that song or buying that t-shirt or buying that concert ticket, but you want them to keep coming back over and over again. One of the best ways to do that is to give your audience a sense of belonging into your brand. So what that looks like is, for example, the TxLips Band. We call instead of calling our fans or followers, we call them the TxLips Nation. And the TxLips Nation is made up of all the different audiences, all the different demographics, identities of people that have seen the Guitar Gabby and the TxLips Band brand, and they've seen different avenues and ways that they can support that brand. And not only that, but they see that what we're doing is developing a company or a product and service that, yes, we want people to buy into, but we're giving that back to our audience through a sense of awareness and belonging by saying, hey, here's some free merch for you. No, you don't have to buy it. I'm just going to send it to you as a thank you for supporting us long term. So that's going to help to develop sustainability. When we talk about marketing strategies to develop sustainability and strengthening your brand loyalty, which will ultimately increase sales, it starts right now. It starts with how are you taking your product, how are you taking your brand and marketing it to your audience in a way that shows them, hey, I want you to support me, but I'm also interested in supporting you. Beyonce does a really good job of that by talking to the Beehive. It makes I am definitely a dedicated member of the Beehive. I am not a dedicated member to the point where I'm like in the audience up front at her concert. So that's only because I just don't like being around like a ton of people at concerts. But Beyonce does a really good job of making her fans, the Beehive, feel like we are part of her journey. She does a really good job of making us feel like, we have some, not say so, but we have that she hears us. And Beyonce does that through different photo shoots. She does that through different marketing campaigns. She does that through different meet and greets. So there's so many different ways that Beyonce markets her brand and her image and her sound and her music and her business to her consumers, to the Beehive. But she does it in a way that doesn't make us feel as fans, doesn't make us feel like we're buying into a service or a product buying tickets that cost however many hundreds of dollars only for that artist to not give us anything in return. So if you're taking notes, marketing refers to the actions. It's going to be the tools that you use to attract your audience to, one, purchase or participate in buying your product or service, but more importantly, developing long-term value and dedication from your audience. And you do that through giving them a sense of awareness, giving them a sense of belonging. Another person that does a really awesome job who has a great, strong brand, and considering the time that Tina Turner was developing her brand and existing in the music industry was also very important. But Tina Turner's brand was edgy, and it still is. It's edgy, it's authentic, it's soulful, it's all of these different things, all of the different facets of what makes Tina Turner Tina Turner. When you think of Tina Turner, you think of the crazy hair, you think of the edginess, you think of what's love got to do with it, you think of all of these different things that that make Tina Turner who she is. You also obviously think of the impeccable vocal ability and amazing music, but one of the important things when you're developing tools to market your brand and developing your brand itself is, again, finding the things that you naturally are passionate about. I watched a documentary about Tina Turner, and she was just talking about how she naturally has always been drawn to the edginess and to the grittiness of rock and roll music. Now, when Tina Turner first came out and was singing songs and love ballads, you know, it was still definitely the audience received it because Tina Turner is Tina Turner. But what was really amazing and what opened up her audience to a wider, diverse demographic is the fact that Tina Turner said, I naturally love rock music, so I'm just going to start doing what I naturally love. And that right there opened up her audience demographic, not just to Black people who love the soulfulness and the love ballads that she wrote and put out, but it also opened up her audience to white people who really loved rock music and who were listening to the Bee Gees and all of these other classic rock bands at the time. So we're looking now at, so when you think about it from a visual perspective, now we're seeing classic rock bands like Leonard Skinner and Led Zeppelin and the Bee Gees and all of these different artists. And then you also see a Black woman who has this really cool, edgy look. Naturally, you're like, I wonder who she is. If you don't already know of her, I wonder who she is and what she might bring to the table. So that was a mouthful, but just taking notes again, marketing refers to the actions or the tools that you can use to attract your audience to not only, one, participate in the product or service that you're immediately providing, but also aiming to develop a long-term relationship with your consumer base, with your audience base. And you can do that through wonderful examples that Beyonce and Tina Turner have provided us, through making your fans and your audience feel like they have a sense of awareness and empowering them to support you, but you're also supporting them back. What is branding? So we talked a little bit about marketing, and now we're going to talk a little bit about branding. Branding is the process of creating a strong positive perception being one of the key words of a company or an entity or a musician. Well, I won't read through the rest of it because I really want to spend some time talking about the process of creating a strong positive perception. When you're developing your brand, and we'll talk about a couple of questions that you can write down and answer as you're figuring out how do you develop your brand. But one of the most important things with developing your brand is thinking about, how do you want your audience, how do you want people on the outside looking in to perceive you? Whatever that thing is going to be the foundation of your brand. So for example, I told you that I naturally love the color green. So that was part of my brand that kind of naturally just came, and okay, great, we have that figured out. But as I started figuring out, okay, I'm building the TxLips Band, I have all of these ideas in different directions that the company can go in, but what is it that I want my consumers, what is it that I want my audience, the Tulip Nations, to think or perceive of me and of my company when they hear Guitar Gabby or when they see a certain image? I want them to perceive well-rounded. I want them to perceive diverse in terms of all the different passions that I'm interested in. I want them to see intersections between different industries. I want them to see inspiration. I want them to feel empowered to do the same thing. I don't want it to feel exclusionary. And so I had to figure out, and again, your brand and your marketing strategy are always going to be pivoting and changing over time. But I really had to sit down and figure out, what are the different audiences that I naturally have and that are naturally drawn to what it is that we're doing? And what are some of the other audiences that might not necessarily naturally be drawn to what it is that we're doing, but could be drawn or attracted to what we're doing if I present the brand in the right perception or in the right lens. So when you're thinking about your brand, you want to think about, again, what is it that you want your audience or people on the outside looking in to perceive of you, of your art, of your music, of your sound, of your pain, whatever it is, figuring out what exactly that perception is, and then taking that and building on top of it. Some of the things that you can use to help develop your brand and the perception that you want people to see you, or the light that you want them to see you in, is coming up with a really cool logo. Um, I'm sure we'll pass through my logo again, but I developed a couple of different logos early on in my career because one, just it's fun to come up with logos, but two, it just provided more opportunity for me to market the brand of the TxLips Band to different people and to different avenues. And again, I'll show you the different logos that we've developed over the years and how some of those things are important to how we market our brand. The second thing, again, is going to be your mission statement. We talked a little bit about that earlier, and the purpose of your mission statement is, again, really just to drive home to your audience, to your consumer, this is what I'm after. These are the goals that I'm working towards, and I would love for you as a listener, as a consumer who's purchasing my products or my services, I want you to join me on that mission, and together we can reach the same goals together. And not only that, but we can also, it's also empowering your audience or your consumer to feel, again, empowered, like they can do that same thing. So yeah, your mission statement is very important. And coming up with a consistent theme throughout all marketing communication. So that's pretty important as well. And what do we mean by a consistent theme? Going back to the green, 9 times out of 10, if you see a picture of me or a video presentation, it doesn't matter if we're in the legal industry, if we're in the music industry, TV, whatever, conservation, green is always the foundation and it's the consistent theme that I have used in marketing my brand through all these different lenses to different audiences in the respective industries that I just listed. So being very consistent with your theme is very important. That doesn't have to necessarily be a color. It could be a look. Another thing, going back to Beyonce, another thing that Beyonce is consistent in is wearing leotards. You can always see Beyonce wearing a really cute one piece. Truthfully, every time I go to a Beyonce concert, I'm waiting to see what outfit she's wearing because I know that she's going to slay, and I know that I'm not going to see the same thing that I've seen before. But it's really, 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 and again, that develops an excitement. It develops when you're consistent with your theme and when you're consistent with how you brand yourself and how you market your brand, it gives your audience the opportunity to wonder what's next. It gets them enticed to buy into or to want to support the goals and the long-term mission, yes, but more importantly, they're really excited to know, what is she going to do next? What is she going to wear next? What song is she going to release next? So developing a consistent theme in your look, in your sound, in your company strategy across the board is super, super important. Effective branding helps companies differentiate themselves from their competitors to build a loyal customer base. And that's super, super important as well, because when you are developing your brand and developing a marketing strategy behind that brand, it's really important to look at, not that you have to study or be consumed with it, but it's really important to look at what your competitors or what other people in that same space might be doing. And the reason why that's important is because another pillar of developing a brand is what makes you stand apart? What makes you different from everyone else? There are a lot of Black women that play guitar in the world. I'm not the only one. But what makes me unique? What makes me stand out visually, audibly, the way that I conduct business? What makes me stand out and apart from everyone else? And the same thing goes for the person next to me. So when you're figuring out your brand, it's important to definitely keep an eye on and know what other people are doing, only for the purposes, in my opinion, only for the purposes of figuring out how you need to pivot and grow as the world around you and as your competitors continue to grow and elevate as well. And the more that you evolve with developing new ways to approach marketing your brand and new ways to pivot your brand, is going to help you, again, build that consumer base that's going to be loyal and dedicated to the cause, because they know that this time next year, Guitar Gabby and the TxLips Band are going to give us a different sound or a different look, but it still is consistent with what we know they've produced in the past. So if you're taking notes, what you're writing down is, what exactly is your brand? Your branding is the process of creating a strong, positive perception of who you are. And the second thing to write down with that is developing a mission statement, elements like a logo or a website, And the third thing to write down is making sure that you develop a consistent theme throughout all of your brand and through all the avenues that you're going to market your brand. So we'll talk a little bit about the differences between marketing and branding. And if you are watching this, again, if you're watching this after the workshop, definitely feel free to push pause. I know it's been a mouthful, but feel free to push pause and kind of study the screens. I'll also make sure that I provide some additional resources to you that kind of expand on all of these things a little bit more. But we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between branding and marketing. A lot of times it's easy to get branding and marketing confused or think that they're interchangeable, and they're definitely not. They work in tandem with each other, but they're two completely different things that truthfully are dependent on each other. So think of marketing as the actions you take to connect with your consumers to get them to buy your product or services. Again, that's going to be billboards. It's going to be TV advertisements. It's going to be all of those different avenues that you use, social media that you use to get your consumer to participate in what it is that you want them to participate in, whether that's buying your latest album, whether that's buying a concert ticket, buying a new shirt that you just came out with your clothing line. Your marketing is going to be the actions that you take to connect with your consumer to get them to buy into the product or service or thing that you want them to buy into. Your branding, on the other side, is going to be the marketing practice of actively shaping your brand. Branding is about defining who you are as a company. And that's very important, defining who you are as a company or as an entity or as a musician. So some of the things that will help you define who you are is going to be coming up with a really cool name. For me, Guitar Gabby, truthfully, I think Instagram might have, when I was making an Instagram ages ago, I think it might have suggested some iteration of Gabby Guitar or Guitar Gab. And I just was like, oh, let me play around with this and just kind of say, you know what? I like Guitar Gabby. It's simple. You hear it, it has a nice ring. It makes you go, okay, obviously Gabby plays guitar. So who is Gabby and where can I find more information about Gabby? And in addition to that, it reaches people who are like, if you're a musician and you hear anything, I don't know about y'all, but me as a musician, if I hear or see the word guitar or bass or drum or anything that has to do with an instrument, I'm automatically locked in like, wait, so what about a guitar? So just figuring out a really cool, unique name that's going to ring and make people think of what it is that you want them to think of when they hear or see that name. Another thing we talked about is logos or a really cool tagline, fonts, colors. All of these things are really going to be important as you develop your brand and as you develop a strategy to market that brand. Now, some of the things that kind of overlap between branding and marketing, because there is some overlap, are these two things right here: value proposition and message. So your value proposition is going to be the value that you assign to your brand and how you market the value of that brand. And that can be difficult. It can also be very expensive. A really good example is, let's say you have a brand. Let's take colors, for example. My brand is green and I want to do a photo shoot, but I want the value of the photo shoot to look like I put a lot of time and energy into it. That's going to cost me some money because I have to, redo my hair before I go to a photo shoot. I have to maybe re-dye my hair. I want to make sure I have really cool, cute pieces, jewelry, outfits, boots. I always make sure that my guitar is clean and not looking dusty. All of these things take time and energy and money as you are figuring out a way to take that photo shoot or that one photo and put it out on social media in an effort to attract your audience to purchase a ticket or to purchase my album. So the way that you assign value to the thing, to your brand, is by, again, just taking a step back and figuring out what exactly is it that I want my audience to think of when they look at this image. Going back to the exercises that we talked about earlier, a really good way to figure out or to see some examples of how people, other artists have assigned value to their brand is by looking up Prince or Beyonce. Every time you see Beyonce, super polished, very clean, has a certain look. Again, Beyonce's look is always different. It's always evolving. We're always excited to know what she's going to wear next. But at minimum, I know that Beyonce is going to always give us something that is high value, that is quality, that is polished and looks good. That takes time, that takes money. So if you are figuring out how you can develop a value for your brand, take a step back and just really take some time to stack up some money, stack your bread. And when it's time to put money into a really good photo shoot or a nice outfit, or making sure that your instrument is clean, or making sure that your shirts are ironed before you do a photo shoot. Just taking the time to really make sure that all of those, again, we talked earlier about this, it's the small things that you may not think about in the moment. Nobody will notice that. But those, I promise you, those are the things that your audience, that your consumer are going to see first, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. And immediately, because of how human nature is and how we all can be, you might put your consumer in a position where they're like, okay, well, it looks like they didn't take time to at least clean the guitar. I mean, how are you, Guitar Gabby? You didn't clean your guitar. So it's just little things like that that are important. And then scooching over to your message, that definitely goes hand in hand with your value, definitely goes hand in hand with your messaging, because what you're saying, when you take time to make sure you're polished and clean and your makeup is done right, or again, your instruments are clean or whatever, when you take time to make sure that those things look good before getting in front of the camera, before getting on TV, before getting into that radio interview, you're telling your audience, the message that you're sending to them is, I'm taking time to make sure that I give you, as my consumer who is paying me, who is giving me your money through whatever avenue, I want to make sure that you all are getting the best possible product, the highest value, the highest quality product that I can give you. And again, that helps to develop that long-term sustainable relationship with your fan base. And it helps them also to get a sense of ownership and awareness into what it is that you're doing. So if you're taking notes from the difference between marketing and branding, your marketing is going to be the tools and actions that you take to connect with your consumers, to get them to buy into what it is that you're asking them to buy into. Whereas your branding is going to be the way that you shape your brand. It's going to be defining who you are as an entity. It's going to be your name, your logo, your colors, your style, all of those things. And the third thing to write down is, what exactly is the crossover between branding and marketing? Assigning value and making sure that your messaging is coming through clearly and that you're articulating it in a way that's going to develop long-term sustainable relationship with your consumer base. All right, so how do you find your brand? So these are a couple of questions that I would start with. If you're taking notes, definitely push pause on this screen or screenshot it, whatever you need to do. But I personally like to journal. And so even now, I have an established brand, but like I said, your brand is always evolving. It's always changing. So there are times where I will sit back and have to assess myself and say, what exactly are my company's core values? What do you believe in and why? For me, that is one, making sure that I take care of the people that are participating in what it is that I'm asking them to participate in. So like the musicians in my, sorry, I had to send that call to voicemail. But for example, the TxLips Gang, the musicians, one of the core values that I established early on in the TxLips Band as a company is making sure that, one, if we're going to go on tour somewhere, I like to make sure that I provide food. And it seems simple, y'all, but you would be surprised how many tours and artists that I've played for where something as simple as like food or like per diems or, transportation, ground, all that kind of stuff was not included. So it's the little things like that that are part of your core values, making sure that you show appreciation to your team. And the reason why I believe in those things is because I'm asking my musicians or I'm asking my executive team to help me accomplish a common goal or a common mission. And if I'm going to ask them to do that personally, I believe in reciprocating that. So figuring out what exactly your core values are as an entity, as a musician, as a band leader, company, whatever, is really, really, really important as you're building and developing your brand. Also, as you're doing that, figuring out why do you believe in those things. Second thing is going to be your mission statement. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but your mission statement explains what you want to accomplish. Making sure that you really take time to think about it. Mission statements don't have to be that long. Truthfully, 2 sentences is like good because your mission statement is supposed to be just a quick snapshot for your audience to say, okay, I see what their goals are, and I think that I can align with that, or I see something that I feel connected to. The third thing is going to be, what kind of feelings or emotions do you want to inspire from your audience? Do you want to draw that rage? Do you want to draw the subtle side? Do you want to draw love? Do you want to draw, the softer side of your feelings? All of these different facets of who you are and what makes you you are definitely things that you can tie into your brand and how you market your brand. And moreover, inspiring your audience to meet you on that same wavelength. So for example, when I do shows, like Die Today is one of my favorite songs to perform live because just like thinking about the song it draws a certain emotion out of me, because I immediately am drawn to the moment where I was in my dorm and I was crying because I just got out of my first like bad, relationship, breaking up, and just remembering all of the things and feelings that I had swirling around me at that moment. And when I came out of that moment, the result was Die Today. It was the Deadpool. It was all of these great songs that people now know as a really cool song that has, an edge, or, this feeling. But I always go back to the feelings and emotions that I had in that moment when I wrote those different songs. And when I'm on stage, I try to channel those feelings so that I can inspire my audience to meet me on that same wavelength. And then from there, that will allow you the opportunity to control your audience and to kind of guide them and steer them into where it is that you need them to go next. One of the four things is going to be what makes you different. We talked a little bit earlier about what makes you stand out in a sea of many. There are so many different people that are in your field that play the same instrument as you do, that have a similar company that they also make clothing. Sometimes those people are going to be a lot better than you. Sometimes they're not going to be remotely as good as you. But it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, you are unique, you are different. So figuring out what makes you stand out in a sea of many is extremely important as you're figuring out your brand and as you develop a marketing strategy behind that brand. The fifth thing is going to be, what do you want you and your brand to be associated with? This will help you to define your audience. So for example, if for me, I knew early on that obviously I wanted my brand to be associated with my love for conservation, for music, and for law. But most importantly, the education behind all of that, the foundational principles that govern all of these industries that I personally have found passions in. So early on, I knew I got to figure out a way for my brand to be associated with education. And from there, that has drawn in a certain type of audience of people that are looking to learn new things, or might want to come to me about certain things that might be specialties in my wheelhouse. So figuring out what you want your brand and yourself or your company, you as an entity, to be associated with is super important and will help you naturally define your audience. And your sixth thing is going to be, what is your brand's personality? I can be goofy sometimes, and a lot of people on social media see the funny side of me, but then the next moment they might see the serious side of me. They might see the business side, but all of those different personalities and sides of me, I had to figure out and be intentional about making sure that all of those different sides of my personality were brought through my brand in a way that was not necessarily performative, but in a way that was finding the same wavelength, going back to the emotions earlier, finding the same wavelength in space that I can connect with my audience members on. And then how to market your brand. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but one of the first things is print advertisements. So posters, newspapers, flyers, etc. Search engine optimization is very important. And what that basically is when you go to Google and you type in, let's experiment really quick. When you type in guitar Gabby on Google, your search engine optimization is going to be this right here. This is going to be, how much are people Googling that, your name or you as an entity? Where are they looking to find more information about you? So the more that you develop a strong brand, again, we talked about consistencies earlier, green, 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 different looks, but at the end of the day, it still is green. Repetition is key. So as you're figuring out what exactly your brand is, and the more that you market your brand through social media using hashtags, print advertisements, radio play, making sure that you're consistent across the board is going to help boost and increase your SEO, your search engine optimization. And that's super important because, again, when we talk about pipelines and wanting to develop that direct pathway for your audience to engage, that's going to be super, super important. One of the other things is going to be, again, social media, and then email marketing and newsletters, radio, TV, video. Effective marketing requires you to find your audience so that you can market your brand in a way that feels relevant to your consumer. So that's a little bit what I was talking about with regards to the education piece. So if I'm looking to attract the educational demographic of my audience, I'm going to post something that has to do with education or an opportunity to learn. When I was posting about this workshop and these series of workshops that we're doing in partnership with Girls Rock Detroit and Rochester, one of the biggest things for me was using certain hashtags that put people in different industries, in conservation, in music, in law, in production, putting all of those things together to cater to the audience that is seeking to learn something new or to learn more. And this last part is what we were talking a little bit about earlier. This requires you to study and know what your competitors are doing. So spend some time figuring out and watching other people. And from there, you will naturally begin to figure out some of the things that will help you develop your brand. So I'm going to just skim through this because we talked about some of these things in the last workshop. And I'm going to, again, make sure that if you're watching this, you'll have a copy of this presentation to refer back to later. But one of the things that I want to draw out right here that is new is starting out small. You know, as you're developing a marketing strategy for your brand or for your company, it can be a lot. It's overwhelming, not even gonna lie to you. But let's start out small. Write out all the things that you need to accomplish those goals. Some of those things are going to be, again, developing your brand. And we looked at a couple of exercises earlier that will kind of help you get on the right path to figuring that out. Developing your logos, a brand, company name, etc. One of the other most important things that comes down the line, because this can be expensive, is protecting your brand and marketing your intellectual property. So when you develop a logo or a name like Guitar Gabby or the TxLips Band, I make sure that we have all of our trademarks assigned. To make sure that all of our trademark is protected so that when I go out to market that brand later through use of my logo or through use of my name or through whatever, I make sure that I have the legal protection, a federally recognized legal protection that will help me for longevity. And then copywriting your work if applicable. This goes back to a little bit what we talked about in our last workshop about if you're an artist, you're writing music, if you're a painter, if you're a novelist, if you're a writer, all of those things are going to be part of your brand, and it's going to be part of what you use to market your brand to a broader demographic. So making sure that you take time to really think about and isolate your short and long-term goals and everything that you need to accomplish those things is very, very important. And one of the last things is routine schedule, which slides into this right here. Repetition is key, which is very difficult, but the more that you are repetitive, again, we talked about green guitar, green everything. My hair is usually green, it's faded right now. My nails are usually green, but the more that you're repetitive, it helps to establish your brand and your image visually or audibly to your consumer. So as soon as they see a green guitar, they know that's Guitar Gabby and the TxLips Band. They know that that means it's going to be something like a workshop or it's going to be a show. So you have to train your audience, if you will, by using repetitive strategies that will help develop that sustainable image or audible or sound, if you will, to your consumer. And then this was also something that we kind of looked at in our last workshop, but just kind of sliding through this again, figuring out what your brand is, what makes you important, why should people care about that, going through photos of some of your favorite artists online. And we looked at Prince earlier as an example. You're looking for the similarities and consistencies in their outfits. Or and another exercise, another iteration of this exercise that you can do is, as you're looking at some of your artists, watch some of their interviews, figuring out how they respond to frequently asked questions. Because one thing I can definitely say, I'm on both sides of the press industry, being the one who does the interviewing and being the one who gets interviewed, is that 9 times out of 10, most interviewers are going to ask some of the same questions. What is your name? How did you come up with that name? How did you come to music? How long have you been playing guitar? So figuring out what exactly your canned response is, if you will definitely, again, help with your repetition, and it's going to help create consistency. And it's going to show that you know how to answer these questions, or you know how to present your image in a slightly different way every single time that you step out into the public eye. But at the end of the day, your brand is consistent and your marketing strategies are going to be consistent. So as you're looking up some different artists, looking up Prince, Beyonce, Tina Turner, whoever your favorite is, look at their image, look at their photo shoots, look at their music, or listen to their music and listen to their interview responses and figure out, okay, I see the consistencies in how Beyonce responds to certain questions that she's always asked. When you figure that out, that is going to be the foundation of your brand. And then again, educating yourself is super, super important. Knowledge is power. All of it is important. Sometimes that can be in the format of workshops like this. Sometimes it can be online courses. I have personally taken a lot of online courses, specifically around intellectual property over the last 5 or 6 years through Coursera, as an example, which is a really good online tool that has so many different workshops on all different type of hot topics you can think of. But staying engaged and staying up and educating yourself is super important, because again, you're going to grow and evolve. Your brand is going to grow and evolve. Your marketing strategies need to grow and evolve. So as you're figuring out all of those things, it's super important to make sure that you are educated around all of those things, and making sure that you're educated around what what your consumers want and what they're saying, what your fans are saying in response to what you're putting out there. And the third thing is really making sure that you're educating yourself on what your competitors or what people around you are doing, not so you can copy them, but so that you can figure out, okay, I see that we're in the same field, we have a similar thing going. This is what I might do to stand out or to stand apart. And that your counterpart might do the same thing. All of it is great. All of it is needed and is going to help to drive some of the diversity within different industries and strategies. And that is it. So this is the logos that I wanted to show you. So these are just 3 of them. We have like 5 or 6 logos. But sometimes I'll use the TxLips Band logo just because it immediately, like, depending on the type of background that it's on, sometimes people are initially drawn to, again, going back to consistency. They see the green, they see, oh, wait, is that a drumstick? That's kind of cool. Then they start to look for some of the other details of the logo. Wait, are those doll heads like that? Oh, those are tuning. That's kind of cool. So that's one way to engage your audience through marketing your brand. This is just super simple. It's edgy, it's green. I have a lot of different colors of that logo. And then, yeah, this is just the Guitar Gabby logo. It's just fun. It looks really cool. But again, the consistency is green, 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 green. So repetition is key. Being consistent is very important. Marketing, figuring out what your brand is and how to market your brand is always going to be evolving. And I also just realized that this is not spelled correctly. It is guitar, Gabby, like it is there. And yeah, so that was a lot, but I really hope that you all were able to take away some really great things. I will definitely make sure that everyone gets a copy of this presentation so that you can refer back to it later. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me on IG or, email, whatever, if you have questions or just simply want to talk and learn more. I'm an open book and I love to share whatever information I have with everybody else as much as I can. So yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to you for joining in today or even later. And also big thanks to Girls Rock Detroit and Rochester team for partnering up with me and the TxLips Band to put together this series of workshops. We're going to be doing several others. So make sure that you are following all of our social media pages, making sure you're going to our websites to be in tune with our next couple of things that we'll be talking about. So yeah, thank y'all so much. TxLips Gang.